because of that accident. The governor is going to address the media after this. It'll be curious to see if that working group, if that is one of the issues that they will tackle.
On everything. Wear and tear on the tire. We're going to look at that and look how far. So we're looking at tread depth to make sure that it's in compliance. We're looking for wear marks. What's the requirement on tread? We're down to 430 seconds. So that is the least that they're allowed to. Then we would be placing that tire out of service. So Ohio would say 230 seconds. We've actually gone above and beyond that for the tires, just to make sure that we have that component in there and that there's enough tread on those tires to make sure that they're functioning properly. Walk around the back here. Again, he just completed light checks, making sure that everything, he's going to start checking for emergency. What he did right there, opening that door all the way, is to make sure that that door actually stays in the open position. So in an emergency, we don't want the kids or the driver to have to worry about keeping the door open. That locking mechanism is actually designed to leave it open at that full and outright position. So it's able to stay locked so they can evacuate as quickly as possible. So, and kids practice this at the beginning of school. The drivers are practicing this with them, so they get the opportunity. So it's not just an emergency; it's being done beforehand. But we're doing the inspection to make sure that all of those things are met. So if they go to open it, the door actually opens. It does what it's supposed to. So it's a mechanic. It's a mechanical device. If we don't constantly use it, rust, corrosion, all those other things can get in the way of an emergency function. So then we can start going on the other side. The other thing that they're doing is looking at all the reflective tape to make sure that, obviously we know a giant yellow bus, but in low light level, we also want to be able to describe that bus to oncoming traffic. That's what all the reflectivity does for us. So even if they can't see the color of the bus, based on the reflectivity in those patterns, they're going to understand I'm approaching a school bus. That's why everything is marked consistently. You'll see it around the emergency exits too. So if we do have an emergency and law enforcement, emergency personnel are coming to a vehicle, they're able to pick up very quickly, where am I looking for emergency exits and how can we best help children in this case to get out and know our points of entry. So then we'll walk all the way around. Again, he's going to now go under the engine, into the engine compartment. So you'll notice the inspector up top is rocking that steering wheel back and forth. We're checking all the components. We're making sure that the suspension is doing what it's supposed to. The linkage going back and forth is not showing excessive wear. So we want that bus to operate. So if the driver is giving inputs into that it's operating the way it should be. And if we're showing excessive wear, we have a potential or a problem down the road. Tie rods can come out. All those parts and pieces can fail. We want to catch it before they fail. So that's what they're inspecting up to. We're also looking for oil, fluid. We're looking for all the belts, everything that's maintaining, all the way down to the brakes. So he's watching for all that stuff to move, to make sure that it's moving correctly. And then he's also measuring the brakes. So that measurement tells us, is it within compliance? Is it actually putting enough force on the system to actually apply the braking system correctly so it stops like it's supposed to? So that's what they're going through there. When he first started, these mirrors that look more like ears out here on the end, these are called crossover mirrors. We check them for vibration and make sure that they're actually secured to the vehicle. These are one of the more important mirrors when it comes to being a bus driver. You can actually see the children. We'll give you opportunity if you wish to sit in the driver's seat where you're actually seeing the children cross in front of you. So if you think of a small child crossing in front of a bus, they're taught 10 feet or more past in front of the bus, but when you have little Johnny that's only this tall, you have the potential of not being able to see them.
Absolutely.
So these crossover mirrors have to be in a very specific angle. They have to make sure that they don't have that vibration and that they're able to see what's going on. So that's one of many very important parts of it. So far to the point that we actually make them defrost here in the state of Ohio. So just like you would have your side mirrors on your own vehicle where you hit your button and you defrost them, these mirrors are actually required to defrost also, so it doesn't matter what kind of weather we get here in Ohio, they're able to clearly see what's going on. And you'll see a lot of bus drivers at the beginning of their shift, they're out here, and what are they doing? They're cleaning their mirrors. So if you ever come and watch them as they're getting ready for the school day, those are their parts and pieces that they're doing. So, any questions on the outside so far?
No.
Nope. Okay.
Yeah, so at some point I would like to see those mirrors and take a look.
Absolutely. So I believe he is on the other side here, and he's probably gone underneath. Okay. So, you'll get your steps in today.
If you're just joining us, Dan DeRosa with 19 News here. You're watching Ohio Governor Mike DeWine go through the inspection process of a certified Ohio State Highway Patrol certified school bus. You can see the inspector there going underneath the bus. He's already inspected the exterior, and this is all a part of a twice yearly inspection to get approval and certification to be safe. This is, of course, all in appropriation. This is all because of the governor. Starting last week, he formed the Ohio School Bus Safety Working Group. He may name some of the individuals who are going to be on that safety working group when he speaks with the media, maybe even a timeline for the work that they're about to do and the topics that they've been asked to examine. This is, of course, after last week's tragic bus accident in Clark County that was just north of Dayton. That 11-year-old little boy who was ejected from the bus and killed when it collided with another vehicle, and the bus driver tried to get off to the side of the shoulder to avoid the collision, but it ended up rolling the bus and ejecting that child. So the question of seat belts has come up, and that will, of course, be a part of this work group that will now have to examine whether or not Ohio should move to a mandatory seatbelt law or not. Ohio currently does not require school buses to have seatbelts, and students use those seatbelts.
I'm not sure how many of us will fit in.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. I think the photographers are going to go away while we sit out here. Yeah, there's no way we'll fit.
Yeah, so we want them to be as safe as they come up. So we're actually lighting this area as they come up. There's handrails that are required. So our inspectors are actually checking every one of these points to make sure if a child grabs a hold of this, that it is secure in nature. These steps will have a tendency to rust. We're checking those to make sure that we don't have to have an issue with that. So as you come in, our inspectors are going to go through all of them. They're sitting in front of them to make sure that all of those things are working. The lights are working properly. The override switches. So if we have an issue on the light system itself, there is a button that they can push that will actually activate the reds all the way across the front. So even if this doesn't activate.
I tell you what, while the governor is on the bus here, there's not going to be a lot to see. We have a story that our own See New Yorker did on this very topic, the examination of buses. So until the governor takes to the podium while he's touring the inside, let's take a look at our story filed by our own See New Yorker.
It takes a lot to get this shiny blue sticker put on the outside of Ohio school buses.
It's everything from top to bottom. The engine compartment, the frame, the tires.
Ohio State Highway Patrol Trooper Sergeant Todd Belcher tells me there are more than 20,000 school buses in the state, and each one has to be inspected at least twice a year. So from April through August, these inspectors are busy. They have a checklist and they're checking it twice. Do you have to be here for each inspection?
No. Okay. No. If it's something that the bus garage and the mechanics can fix, then they'll fix that. The bus will get re-inspected, and then it would pass the inspection.
Sergeant Belcher says we've been fortunate here in the Buckeye State with only about 4,000 minor traffic crashes involving school buses between 2015 and 2017.
Well, we haven't had a fatal school bus crash in about 10 years.
In some instances, it only takes seconds for an accident to happen, like this school bus crash in Texas, all caught on camera. One of the goals is to make sure these buses are safe before something like that happens. Parents I talk with say drivers on the road with the school buses need to be aware.
They need to be safe. They need to stop and pay attention to the rules.
I've seen them in our area working on those buses. I know people that drive for the buses, and I know they do a really good job.
It's everyone's responsibility, from the bus driver to the other cars on the road, and even down to the school children looking before they cross.
Getting Answers, CN New Yorker, Cleveland 19.
And again, that was a story filed by our CN New Yorker a number of months ago. That, of course, the statistic of Ohio not having a fatal accident has since changed because of last week. You're watching Ohio Governor Mike DeWine inside the bus getting a tour by the Ohio State Highway Patrol on the inspection process, the very process Sia was just highlighting there. We'll try and listen in here, see if we can hear anything.
And going through that portion.
So how long does an inspection take?
If I put 2 inspectors on a bus and they find nothing, it should take them close to half an hour to get it done. And that's if they find nothing wrong with the bus. So once you start finding issues, it's just going to extend. So making sure that they're backtracking and finding exactly. And I think Mr. King there told me he's been able to inspect over 50,000 buses. So there's a lot of buses that he has put his eyes on, that he has gotten to the point where he can walk into a bus and pretty much tell you this is what we're going to find. Yes, so cameras are what are considered approved options. A lot of schools, you will find that they use them. Behavioral issues, they can also use them for traffic on the outside. And then they're also able to tie into them for turn signals and things like that on the outside. So they're able to get that portion taken care of and take a look at what's going on in and around the bus. So, and then passenger capacity on this bus is 71. You have a driver that's responsible for 71 people inside of here. You're not going to be able to see everything that goes on, so that helps the teachers, it helps the school administrators to find out exactly what happened on a bus, and it just gives the school a level of protection for what's happening.
So the camera is not something that you can see then?
No.
It just records it?
Yeah, it records it and goes to the supervisor's office. They work pretty well.
Well, as you inspect buses, what's the most common problem, or is there a common problem? What do you hit most often?
Brake problems, lights, mainly. Some steering issues. But brakes and lights are the most common.
It is extremely important when our drivers do their pre-trip inspections that they're able to report that back to their transportation directors. Ohio has some phenomenal transportation directors that take their job very seriously, so that communication back and forth in between the driver and what they find on a pre-trip is communicated back through, and then allows the mechanics to get the opportunity. We have humans in the state of Ohio. Sometimes those communications aren't clear enough where, hey, I heard a funny noise. Our inspectors understand what that funny noise would be, and we're able to find that and actually get underneath. But we're not also expecting our bus drivers to crawl underneath and actually measure brakes, and that's what he's able to do, is to find those type of things. So.
Great. All right. Let me look. Can I see the
Absolutely.
what you see up there as far as the?
Sure. I'll get out of your way. I'm sorry, Bob.
Okay, so run me through what, if I'm driving this bus, what am I looking at? What are the things that I most worry about?
So those mirrors that we talked about, these are crossovers. So you're able
Those
to.
guys there.
So these are rear view mirrors on the side. We're talking the ones that are on the nose here. These are
I
the
see.
crossover mirrors.
Okay.
So you see how one of your
sure.
reporters just walked in front?
Oh, sure.
You can see all the way down in front of that bumper.
You sure can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those have to be adjusted just right for the driver to make sure that we can see the nose, and you can actually see down both sides of that bus. So when they go to close their doors and they know that they're ready to start moving, they don't have to worry about one child didn't get on the bus. I shut the door before everybody got on. So they're able to actually see all the way around the bus. And then when they're operating in and around schools, they're able to see all the way around for them. So they have that, and then this here gives them the opportunity to see. They don't have to turn around. They can look up, and they can see everything behind it. They can see everything. You want to run the governor through a cycle? Yeah, let me ask you.
No, you can see.
There's no catch point. Yeah. I knew there was a change.
You're watching Ohio Governor Mike DeWine behind the wheel of a school bus in Menor. He is taking a tour of the inspection process that all of our school buses have to go through before they become certified and are able to transport our children. It is a 182-point inspection. You heard the gentleman from the Ohio State Highway Patrol say that if all goes well and there are no problems, the inspection could take anywhere around a half an hour or so, and that's with no problems to report or work on. Again, this is all a part of Governor DeWine creating a new group just last week, newly formed Ohio School Bus Safety Working Group. They are going to be looking at a number of issues. This work group that is yet to be named, and we believe the governor is going to be making that announcement as to who will be sitting on this work group, and then the issues that they are going to have to tackle. We know that unfortunately the tragic accident near Dayton last week, a school bus that was traveling to an elementary school on the very first day of school, met on the road. There was a vehicle that crossed the center line into the path of that school bus. The driver tried to avoid the crash, and by veering off to the shoulder to the right side a little bit, could not avoid the collision, and that sent the bus over into the ditch and rolled over. It was unfortunately an 11-year-old little boy who was ejected and died. So that has prompted the governor to want to take a look at this issue. Our seat belts, currently in the state of Ohio, seat belts are not required by law. Does that need to change? What are the issues? What are the pros and the cons? We have heard a number of supporters for seat belts say it's just common sense, but then there have been others that talk about the need for children to be able to get out of a bus quickly, and if they are strapped in, that could be a concern. That's what this safety group will have to cover. We'll have to get answers to, and then provide those answers to the governor, who will then have to decide if legislation is necessary to change certain things, including school buses. There you can see the official patch that is put on a school bus. If your child gets on a bus and you're worried about whether or not it has passed inspection, you can just look for that sticker. Again, the state of Ohio has 19,200 buses that travel our roadways, that take our kids to and from school. And of course, we obviously hope that they do so safely. And that's why they have to go through this 182-point inspection twice a year to become certified. We are waiting for the governor to finish up his tour because he will be taking some questions and perhaps even naming some of the individuals when looking at the press release, the news statement, that the governor will provide additional information on those selected to serve on the working group, the timeline for that group, and the school bus safety topics that they've been asked to examine. And of course, probably the major one, as you might guess, will be whether or not seat belts should be required on all Ohio school buses. It's going to be a major issue. Obviously, there would be a cost involved to retrofit school buses with seat belts.
Well, unfortunately, I have not been a bus driver, sir. So
somebody else can tell us that.
Yeah. I've had the opportunity to talk to several bus drivers. I understand that there's an awful lot of responsibility. I know the Department of Education has done a good job on giving them free service so they understand what they're supposed to be doing, and they constantly train them. They have a whole education portion of that, but I'm not familiar enough with it to speak educatedly for you, sir. Anything else I can answer for you, sir?
Good.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
That.
Man, it was nice to meet you. Thank you.
Good.
Governor, do you want to come?
Yeah, we can do here.
Do a gaggle for
Sure.
this?
Sure.
You guys want to swing around?
Morning, everybody.
Morning. All right, Governor. Looking.
Well, let's wait till everybody gets here.
I'm gonna squat in between guys.
Yeah, we'll wait till we get
Tell
set
me
up.
if I'm gonna get shot, anyone.
Yeah,
I'm-
so
what does Moses say?
I'll start off with something, and then you guys can go. We'll go to you first. So yeah, everybody set.
Can you get it closer, maybe?
Oh yeah, here I'm gonna come on this side. Oh, I'm not anywhere shots over here. Perfect.
Am I good? I'll stay low.
Very good.
We're good? Well, let me first thank Mr. Heath, Superintendent, the Mentor Schools, for allowing us to come here today and to really see what the Highway Patrol does in regard to the inspection of school buses. These school buses are inspected twice a year. The bus driver also every day has to go through a protocol. Buses are the safest form of transportation for our kids. We had a horrible tragedy in Clark County this past week. Unspeakable tragedy for the school, for the family. Fran and I talked to both parents. It's just a horrible thing. It's a parent's worst nightmare to lose a child. What I'm announcing today is the formation of a working task force to look at, from a holistic point of view, is there anything else we can do to make the rides of our school kids and our school kids safer every single day. We go into this with no preconceptions. We're going to look at, the group will look at absolutely every aspect of this, from the construction of the buses to the maintenance, to the inspections. We'll get into issues like seat belts, an issue that certainly has been raised many times. We have some of the states who require seat belts. Most still do not. But really just take a holistic view of this. It is a safe system. Your child is a lot safer in that school bus than they're going to be, at least statistically, than they are riding with a parent into the school. But we can always make things safer, and that's what the goal will be, to come back. So we will be announcing the names of the people who are on this working group. We're going to ask them to do at least 5 hearings. We're going to ask them to come back with a report to me and the legislature and the people of the state of Ohio in December. You'll see, when you see the people who are on the committee, some of them have subject matter expertise. But we're also going to hear from other experts. And one of the things that I'm asking them to do is to have these open hearings so we can have a public discussion, so the public can watch the experts come in, the people who've had experience with buses, people who have studied this, and see what they have to say about if there are other things that Ohio can do to make our kids safer. So I'm happy to answer any questions. You had a question.
So as you went through the outside of this bus and the inside, talk to me about what you saw and the safetiness around that.
Well, I think, we all had the opportunity just a moment ago to see an abbreviated version of an inspection. The Highway Patrol does this for every bus every year, twice. These are experts. They do this every single day. I asked them, how long does it normally take? And they said, well, if we have 2 people on a bus, if we have don't run any kind of problems, it's about a half an hour inspection. So as you look around here and see all the buses here, and then just multiply that all over the state of Ohio, this is a massive undertaking. But it's obviously vitally important. So I don't think I ever sat in the seat of the driver in a school bus, and it's kind of a daunting task. And you think about a bus full of 50 kids or so. You think of these kids getting in and out of that bus, making sure the bus driver has to make sure the traffic is stopped, make sure then the child clears. A huge responsibility. So we all thank our school bus drivers every day. We also want to thank every school has someone who is in charge of transportation. That's a big job. They do a great job as well. So these are people that we just sort of take for granted. Every day we see buses out there. Fran and I, down the road from us, we see some of our grandkids get on a bus every morning at 7:08. Many times we take these bus drivers for granted, but they're doing a phenomenal job to keep our kids safe.
Governor DeWine, speaking of bus drivers, there's a national shortage of bus drivers. Are you how concerned are you when it comes to that bus driver shortage and safety?
Well, I think every school is concerned about making sure they have enough bus drivers. Their margin of error is getting thin. I think some schools, have told me that the backup drivers they have, the alternate drivers they have, those numbers are collapsing. So yes, this is certainly an issue, and this working group can look at that issue as well.
And then let's say this group comes back and says there's changes that need to be made, there's updates. What about funding? Is there future funding that could go to these schools to pay for that?
Well, look, I think we first have to kind of follow the science, follow the data, follow what the best experts that we can find in this country can tell us about how we make our school buses safer. Then, when we get that back, then we'll have to move and do the things that the recommendation says that we should be doing. So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, but we're ready to cross the bridge. Nothing more important than our kids. We've got to keep them safe. They're safe now on these buses, statistically a lot safer than being in a car, but can we make them safer? That's the question I'm asking this working group, and we will listen to what their answer is. But as the process goes through, this is a public process, so the public is going to also be able to hear. You all will be reporting on what happens at these hearings. You will have the opportunity to hear from experts, from bus drivers, from people who know about this and who have studied this.
Governor DeWine, is this something that's been in the works for a while, or is it something that last week's strategy really inspired?
Well, I think we've always, continued to look at how to make the buses safer. That's an ongoing process from the state, from the Highway Patrol, from the local schools. But there is no doubt that this horrible tragedy that occurred last week, I think, makes us think about this some more and re-examine it and ask the question, which is the question that everyone has been asking me the last week: is there anything else we can do to make our buses safer? And that's the right question, and we need to go find out what that answer is.
So after last week's tragedy, seatbelts are top of mind for
Sure.
a lot of people. So I have a two-part question.
one, can you explain why seatbelts aren't mandatory on school buses already? And then two, will the committee have the authority to impose or recommend a seatbelt requirement, and what would it take for that to happen?
There's the debate about seatbelts on buses has been going on for decades. The fact that you do not have a consensus among states, you have some states requiring it, some states not, I think gives you an indication that there obviously are pros and cons in this argument. I'm not the expert, and I don't pretend to be, and that's why we're putting this working group together, and that's why we're asking them to bring in the best information they can, the best studies that have been done, and to make the evaluation. It's like a lot of things in life. You have to weigh it. And look, we have one goal, and that goal is to protect our children and to be as safe as we can. So in regard to will this group have the authority to impose this? No. But what this group comes back with, I think is going to, whatever it is, whatever recommendations they have, some small maybe, some large, we don't know. But I think there's going to be a great deal of weight and authority from this group. We're going to do it publicly. We're going to do it so that the public can see it. We hope that there begins to emerge a consensus even before the final recommendations are made. So the group does not have the authority to mandate it, but this is a report to the people of the states, report to the governor, it's a report to the state legislature, and we'll take action once we get those recommendations.
So this group will be looking into the cost of seatbelts if that is the recommendation.
Sure. I mean, they're going to have to look at everything. They're going to have to look at every aspect of this. And look, no matter what you do, if you do something different, there's going to be a cost connected with that. One of the things that the patrol pointed out is that while there are certain standards in Ohio, there are things where a school has leeway. There are add-ons that you can do. Again, I think this group will look at those add-ons, and one of the questions might be, should those add-ons be mandated? How valuable are they? So these are all things that the working group can look at.
So just so that the public can kind of understand, if the working group did come back with that recommendation, what on the legislative, the government side would need to happen in order for that to come to fruition, I suppose?
Well, there's several different things that can be done. One, you can leave it up to the schools, or two, the state can mandate it. State mandates it, then you have to get into the question of paying for it. But look, I mean, I think speculating on that now is not really particularly wise. I think we just need to wait and see what the recommendations are, and then we can go from there.
Governor, you brought up bringing in and the lack of drivers for the buses.
Yeah.
Nationwide, a lot of driver groups have called for higher wages and higher pay like that. Is this going to be something that the group might look into?
Sure. Look, this group has, the safety of our kids on the bus depends on the bus driver, as well as the construction, as well as other things. So the bus driver is an absolutely essential component, obviously, to the safety of these kids. So, what is the training of the bus driver? They certainly can look at that, look at pay. They can look at availability. All of those things are just part of the whole issue.
Did you talk to any of the Mentor officials here and say what would you prefer us to do?
I talked to the Superintendent Heath. We had a casual discussion about it, and you can certainly talk to him. So I'm not going to quote him or try to quote him, but obviously this is why we're here today. And one of the things we talked about, is the availability of bus drivers, and I don't think it's a secret. Mentor is like other schools that the margin of bus drivers and backup bus drivers is getting smaller. So it's an issue. It's an issue all over the state, all over the country.
But Governor, there's such differences in districts, inequities as far as funding for distant districts. Richer districts can do better than, say, rural districts. I mean, even now with the school bus shortage, school bus driver shortage, isn't there a potential that maybe the state could help some of these smaller districts, especially rural ones, maybe afford drivers? Because pay is a big issue for a lot of them.
I think the issue of availability of drivers is certainly something that's going to be looked at. If pay is impacting that, this group could look at that as well. Having said that, the primary focus of this group is directly on safety. I mean, their primary job is not to address the bus driver shortage, but in discussing and looking at the safety issue, they certainly can, if this group decides to, can take that issue on as well if they want to. Anybody else?
Yes, I don't know if you know, men are among many communities had a historic level of tornadoes last week. I don't know if you saw it like on your way into town. I mean, have communities reached out for state aid or?
Yeah, I mean, as soon as we see that happening on the weather, we reach out to the local communities wherever that happens. If it's a tornado or sometimes flooding on the Ohio River, whatever it is, we have an emergency department. At the state level, they reach out to the local, and we have that contact, very, very quickly. Yeah. Okay, thanks everybody.
Dan DeRose with 19 as the governor wraps up his tour there in Mentor and announcing the formation of this Ohio School Bus Safety Working Group. He did not give us any names. He did say that it will be a mix of people with expertise on school buses, and then they will be assigned to the very simple question: how do we make our school buses safer? Is there anything more we need to be doing? The governor brought up add-ons. That may have been a little confusing. During the tour, the Ohio State Highway Patrol pointed out the cameras that were on this particular bus in Mentor, and they said that that was an add-on, that not every school district has cameras aboard buses, and that will be one of the things that the group will have to look on. Does that need to be mandatory to have cameras on buses? And if so, how are they going to pay for it? That is going to be the major issue. Our Winnie Dortch is actually speaking to the governor right now. She will have the very latest when we start our 3.5 hours of news coming up at 3 o'clock. I believe she'll also have a live report coming up on noon on Channel 19. If we have anything else that breaks, it'll be right here on our digital properties where we can get you the first alert. Until then, I'm Dan DeRose with 19 News Now. Have a great afternoon.
19 News is everywhere. Download our CTV apps and follow us on social media.